Well, welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 best Generation 9 Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So I've done a good amount of moveset guides, I've experienced a lot of Pokemon on the Battle Stadium, and I just have experience with the game now, so I feel confident in talking about which Pokemon are the best. So if you end up enjoying the video, or if it helps out in any way, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment your thoughts down below. Give me what you think are the top 10 best Pokemon. So let's start off with number 10, Quaquaval. When you look at Quaquaval's stats, you don't really think too much of it. Like, it's got 120 attack, and that's about it. But a lot of Pokemon just have better attack and better stats behind that. And then we look at the ability, Moxie. Now there's arguably better Moxie Pokemon like Gyarados or Salamence. They're not Generation 9, but what's the point of using a Generation 9 Pokemon with Moxie if there's just better older Pokemon? And that's where we get into the signature move of Quaquaval, Aqua Step. It raises the user's speed. That's it. You use it and you always get speed while dealing damage with your 120 attack. So the idea is, you take a hit, use it, you're now at speed, that's a KO, Moxie procs, and you're just winning. You can also Terrastallize Quaquaval to give it more damage or better coverage, and then the Pokemon just snowballs out of control in a very short amount of time. It is susceptible to getting walled by pure defensive Pokemon, because if you don't give it that Moxie, then all it has is speed and decent stats, but there's still a world where Quaquaval just takes off and it gets out of control in a very short amount of time. Next up, we have the 9th strongest Pokemon, Orthworm. So to put Orthworm into perspective, we need to compare it to Skarmory, one of the best physical tanks ever in Pokemon. You pair it with the best special defense tank, Blissey, and you get the meta warping and meta defining core known as Skarmbliss. Orthworm's just tankier physically. 70 hit points compared to 65, 145 defense compared to 140. This is just a little bit of power creep. This is creeping the power creep, but it shows that Orthworm just takes physical hits better, and it's on the back of an outrageous ability, Earth Eater. If hit by a ground type move, the Pokemon has its hit points restored instead of taking damage. It's water absorb for Earthquake, and it even counts for Fissure, or just any ground type move. So you go Terra Electric, and this Pokemon is defensively tankier than Skarmory, has no weaknesses, and heals off of ground. Orthworm is just stupid. For number 8, we have Kingambit. So Kingambit makes the list because it is the strongest Sucker Punch Pokemon in the game. It has 135 attack, but same type attack bonus on the dark typing, and its Supreme Overlord ability just gives it damage. And when you look at its stats, these are legendary stats with how they're optimized. We're close to like a sub-legendary or pseudo-legendary with a 550 base stat total, but special attack doesn't really matter. Speed, we're a tanky Pokemon, so we really just have stats where it matters. 100 hit points with 120 defense, 85 special defense. You are tanky, which means you have no right having one of the highest attacks in the game and then getting boosting on it with your ability. Kingambit is the ultimate anti-sweeping Pokemon because sweepers have to take a swing at you. Kingambit says, no, me first with the Sucker Punch, and then just has all kinds of ways of obliterating teams with it. You can just go Choice Band and do like 80% to everything. Depending on where your Supreme Overlord is, you can just find one-hit KOs for free, doing nothing, as long as the opponent attacks you. Or you set up a Swords Dance behind your insane bulk. You can take 2-3 hits, so even if you don't get the KO, you will next time. And then your opponent has nothing to stop you, and just in case the opponent brings a very tanky, stally wall Pokemon, you get access to the Guillotine. Again, you're so tanky that, like, a bulky setup Pokemon is going to be doing 4-hit KO against you, which means you have more than enough time to land the Guillotine, and then one-shot the next Pokemon that comes in with Sucker Punch. Kingambit, it's rough. It's a pretty brutal Pokemon. For number 7, we have Flutter Mane, and Flutter Mane has some pretty well-optimized stats. Wait, what? That's Mismagius. That was almost too much in Generation 4. Oh, I gotta fire that Verlisify guy. He doesn't know how to make videos. What's Flutter Mane's? Oh my god. Really? That's real. So we have a Pokemon that just decided to go, yep, 135 on the speed and 135 on the special attack. You don't see this. The only time this existed was with Mega Evolution, and that was a gimmick that took an item, and you could only do it once per game. But this, no, it's just free. You just get this for free. That is your Pokemon. a 135 speed, so outspeeding Jolteon, while having much higher stats than it on the special, and it can also just bulk out a special attack. Being a Paradox Pokemon, it can run the booster energy, so you get +1 to your speed, so it's like having one of the fastest Pokemon with the Scarf, but able to choose its moves, and it also has access to the Calm Mind. So you get a Quiver Dance on a Pokemon that already has some of the most insane stats ever, and then you just get to wreck whatever you want. Now, it might have sounded like I just described the #1 best Pokemon ever, not only for Generation 9, but the Pokemon does have very low physical durability. 55 hit points, 55 defense, you are going to get wrecked by any kind of physical attacker, and even physical priority moves. So, all those stats, yeah, they're going to be really good, and they can lead to a sweep, but the interesting thing about 135 special attack is that if you go for the +1 on it, that's not a KO range. Like, imagine a Choice Specs Espeon using Psychic. It's effectively the same thing, but people survive those. And in Flutter Mane's case, if that's a physical attacker, a bulky Pokemon, Focus Sash, Assault Vest, or anything like that, then Flutter Mane is going to be very vulnerable and potentially easily KO'd, which is why it's only #7 on the list, but still just like a strong Pokemon you throw into a team to round out like any weaknesses you might have for fast, hard-hitting Pokemon. It's pretty free. It's pretty good. Takes a little bit of setup, but yeah, it's not perfect. Just strong. For #6, we have another starter Pokemon with Skeledirge. So Skeledirge has a pretty good stat profile. 100 on the hit points, 100 defense, 110 special attack. Who cares about the speed at that point? Max out hit points, max out special attack, take a hit, and then hit the opponent harder. But that's not it. What puts this Pokemon over the edge is the Unaware ability. One of, if not the best ability in the game, because it ignores whatever your opponent has done. Oh, they have special defense? Nah. Oh, they have an attack boost, or a Swords Dance, or a Baton Pass, or anything like that? Nah. You just get to crush through it. And its signature move is outrageous. Torch Song raises your special attack after use. So similar to Aqua Step from Quaquaval, but now you're just getting stronger every time you use it. And as a bulky attacker, you just take a hit, Torch Song. If that picks up a KO on Revenge, well, now you just get to KO the next Pokemon. But Skeledirge easily goes 1-for-1 plus, and the big thing about it is that it stops your opponent from winning the game if they got that setup. And Torch Song being a sound move means it bypasses Substitute. So you can really shut out an opponent that's dedicating everything to setup. They even got the Substitute behind their nasty plot or whatever. You say, nah, Torch Song. And then you can also use Throat Spray, which means that plus a Torch Song, the next one's hitting for double damage, you just ramp up. And if your opponent eventually loses their sweeping Pokemon to the bulk of your Skeledirge, if Skeledirge starts finding outspeeds, it just wins. It's a really good Pokemon. However, for me, Crocalor, that's right, the pre-evolution, is better in my opinion because we have an Unaware Pokemon that's tankier than Clefable. Clefable isn't in this, and Clefable is one of the best Pokemon of all time because Unaware absorbs everything, sets up, you can't KO it, and it's just going to two-shot you at the end of the day after it gets its Calm Minds or whatever. Crocalor does the same with Curse. It has Slack Off for Sustain, same thing for Skeledirge. Skeledirge can also sustain through not two-shotting hits, so if it's getting 3-hit KO'd, Skeledirge is just winning. For Crocalor, it can just get tankier, and then eventually just have the damage from the attack buff on Curse, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it because it's unaware. But if you pick either of these Pokemon on your team, you're going to be in a really good spot. For #5, we have Gholdengo. Not only is this the worst design to ever defile Pokemon, but it's also absurd competitively. It's just immune to status moves. It can still be status through secondary effects and stuff, but a Pokemon that is immune to status moves that also has crazy stats and a powerful signature move. It's so dumb what this thing does to Pokemon battles. Game Freak really went, we messed up when we made the concept of tanky Pokemon, even though we introduced some in this generation, so we need to make the ultimate anti-tank that makes Pokemon battles unfun for the rest of eternity. And people are going to use this thing a lot, so a lot of your Pokemon battles are going to be unfun. It has more bulk than it has any right to, it has more speed than it has any right to, and 133 special attack using a 120 base power move with Make It Rain means it can just KO things. But it has Substitute, it has Trick, it has Nasty Plot. It's not okay. So for number 4, I'm going to admit to copping out here and just say all of the sub-legendaries. That's because there's some weird stuff going on. Did you know in version 1.0.1, all the sub-legendaries had their base stats nerfed by 10? I didn't hear anything about it. I guess maybe someone noticed it in the patch notes, but it didn't blow up. This seems like it would be really big news, but no one's really talking about it. Now, maybe that's because these Pokemon aren't usable for Battle Stadium just yet, so we don't really know the full impact of that. And when it comes to something like Pokemon Showdown, that's an imperfect simulator not being played officially, so you're not going to get any good data from it. Especially because Pokemon Showdown is a small audience of casual players playing broken rule sets, we don't really know where these Pokemon are going to land on the official ladder, and then just the random stat nerf also kind of muddies that a bit more, because yeah, you could just put Chin Pao here at number 4, but 120 attack versus 130. What ranges does it lose from that actually end up mattering? Chin Pao could easily be overrated flavor of the month when looking at the other legendary stats and movesets. I'm looking at Slug and Bull Elk. Those stats are absolutely filthy. So I mean, we could just see a whole new level of tankiness come to play. Also, when the Paradox Pokemon are allowed, that's going to spice things up, and it just kind of seems like Chin Pao, little frail, little one-tricky, but still has a lot of damage. Like, it could still just be a really good Pokemon. But I mean, like, we've seen stat profiles like that before. They can be pretty hit or miss, and this is already kind of like a bulky, durable meta. So the other legendaries, they just bring a lot to the table, which is why I'm saying they're all going to be good in their own way. We just kind of have to see how crazy it's going to get when everything is fully unlocked for the Battle Stadium. Now, before I get into the top 3, I want to give my 2 honorable mentions. So I just said how we don't really know what's going to happen with the Paradox Pokemon until the Battle Stadium ranked allows them, and that's why I have Screamtail here. Because in my guide, I said Screamtail could actually just be the best Paradox Pokemon because it's a fast, tanky setup sweeper. It could just do what Flutter Mane does, but better. Gets a couple Calm Minds, just gets 2 tanky to KO, and then it has crazy amounts of damage with the stored power. So if Screamtail ends up performing better, just replace it with the Flutter Mane for number 7, and we should be good there. And then there's Glimmora. This is a Pokemon I think is going to take a lot of development, and also just like weird meta shenanigans. I don't consider entry hazard setup to be good in Pokemon. I don't think it's ever been good, because if you can predict your opponent setting up a Stealth Rocks, you just get more of that turn, and then you convert it into a crazy sweep, or you go for like the really easy and predictable outplays. The amount of effectiveness you get from a Stealth Rock throughout the course of a battle is maybe half a Pokemon. Even in 6v6, there's just going to be tanky Pokemon team that don't care and completely ignore the Stealth Rock, and then there's no value there. So if the opposing Pokemon just gets more direct retaliation or more setup than the value of that Stealth Rock, the Stealth Rock user is just losing. Glimmora adds a little bit extra to that. It could potentially just lay Toxic Spikes for free, but it can also hit hard with the 130 attack. So it makes me wonder, like, can you actually just do the same setup on Glimmora, but not completely waste turns or waste a Pokemon? Or maybe Glimmora doesn't even need to be a Stealth Rock, entry hazard, identity Pokemon, and just throws out a lot of damage. Like, maybe it's just one of the best bulky attackers in the game, too. However, the Pokemon on the rest of this list have no ambiguity to their power, because we have Dondozo at number 3. This Pokemon grinds every battle to a halt because of the Unaware ability. Yep, that's right, Unaware once again, but this time on one of the tankiest Pokemon to ever exist, and it's Mono Water, one of the most reliable and safe typings in the game. You have no way of exploiting this Pokemon except for a same type Choice Specs or Life Orb, Grass, or Electric hit. If you don't have that, you're out of luck. The only other way of dealing with Dondozo is a one-hit KO move, because it can just rest, and then it can rest Sleep Talk. And even as you're switching into your Electric or Grass Pokemon, Dondozo gets a free hit with its 100 attack, and then also that means Dondozo just switches out into a Pokemon that can eat all that, something like Amoonguss. So it's very easy to cover for the Dondozo as well, and Dondozo gets Fissure. So it can just ignore all of your damage, ignore all of your setup, ignore whatever you do, just not even care about your tank Pokemon as well, and then one-shot it. Unacceptable, unbreakable, outrageous, and there's not really much else to say. That's how broken this Pokemon is. It does all of that with 0 complexity. Number 2, we have Clodsire, another Unaware Pokemon that also has crazy tanking stats, but for me, what separates Clodsire is the moveset. What Clodsire gets access to on top of the Unaware turns it into a sweeper. Then you have Curse Amnesia into a Terra-type Terra Blast, while also using Recover. So Dondozo doesn't have the free Recover. Like I said, it has to do like Rest or Rest Sleep Talk. Now that still works just fine for Dondozo, but there's extra reliability in just being able to recover, not lock yourself out for a couple turns, and set up against anything, which is what Clodsire gets to do. It can also just make it to where your opponent doesn't get to win on their Swords Dance, Dragon Dance, Nasty Plot, any of that crazy kind of boosting setup, because Unaware, just the best ability in the game. And then it's also one of the few Pokemon that retains Toxic, so you can just Toxic something that would otherwise resist or not really care about your damage, and you burn it down. You just can't get over the Clodsire. It's very tanky stats, keep it safe even against super effective hits, and it's a Pokemon that's worth investing your Terra type into. So you go off the weakness, set up, and then after an Amnesia, that's not a super effective hit anymore, and after a Curse or two, yeah, you really don't care. And then again, now you're just setting up for crazy damage, or you get 2 birds with 1 stone in the stockpile, Toxic Body Press, hey, now you have defenses, and you just kind of get to shut down almost anything in the game. But somehow that and everything else on the list isn't as crazy as the strongest Pokemon in Generation 9, Garganacl. The game is Garganacl. We are in a Garganacl meta. Everything that happens in the game happens because of Garganacl. You will grind games into Garganacl mirror matches. If you don't have the flying Garganacl, you are going to get fissured because everyone has fissure to deal with Garganacl and Dondozo. But Garganacl can at least sprinkle some salt on Dondozo and make it take a quarter of its health. Because what is this? Salt Cure inflicts 1/8 of the target's hit points. That's it. It doesn't wear off. It's just there. It's like a status move, but you can throw status on top of it. Remember when Burn was the most annoying thing for doing an 8th? And then it got nerfed to a 16th and that felt a little better? No, let's just make it to where you use a move that inflicts damage and then does 1/8 of the opponent's health. And if it's a Steel or Water type Pokemon, so generally like tanky types, you know, Toxapex, sprinkle salt on it, no problem. Corviknight, sprinkle salt on it, no problem. Other Steel type Pokemon that want to be setting up, in theory, like a Skarmory, no problem. And for some reason it has Recover. For some reason it's also one of the tankiest Pokemon to ever exist. This Pokemon just power crept out Toxapex and pretty much every other tanky Pokemon through everything. It's so broken. It tanks everything on its stats, it heals up with Recover, it can Iron Defense to counter Swords Dance and Dragon Dance setup, or just become untouchably bulky, and then it can sprinkle salt onto anything to outstall it, or anti-stall it, and then it has Fissure because it needs a one-hit KO for anything else it can't deal with. It's the ultimate Pokemon. All of that's ridiculous enough, but then its ability means it can't get statused. So Gholdengo can't be affected by status moves, which is different from just not being able to be statused. You can't put Garganacl to sleep. You can't burn it to at least make it slightly uncomfortable off of some kind of status. You can't poison it, so any ability to like Toxic, this unkillable Pokemon, goes away. And somehow that wasn't enough, because it also takes half damage from Ghost type moves. So you can also go Terra Ghost and just remove a weakness. Or stay in whatever typing, or just go different Terra type, and if the opponent has a Shadow Ball or a Ghost type Pokemon, it's just a free resist. It's so ludicrously strong that every battle grinds into a Garganacl mirror match. If you don't bring Garganacl, you're just struggling and suffering at a disadvantage for no reason. But then that means you brought Garganacl, your opponent brought Garganacl, and the game is ultimately giga-stally and unfun. So yeah, this is like a game-breaking, ruining, creeping, meta-shattering Pokemon in every degree to just like the most ridiculous way. It's too good. It is just way too strong. It's tier 0 SS triple plus absurdity. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.